first of all, welcome. And I just wanted to start kind of with the basics of saying, Burlap and Barrel is beautiful spices, equitably sourced. What does that mean? And why did you start this company?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. We actually just turned 3 this month, so it's really cool to have gone down the journey and not, run into the wall yet.
Yeah.
Running into the ground. We started this business 3 years ago, but it started way, way earlier than that. I started this with Ethan, my co-founder, and we've been longtime friends. He was a chef in New York. We decided to start an ice cream business together. He was working as a pastry chef down in Delancey and then went over to work at Tabla with Floyd Cardoz and Danny Meyer's restaurant group.
Yeah.
And he was making a lot of ice cream, and we decided to start a company called Guerrilla Ice Cream, which was flavors inspired by political movements and revolutions from around the world. And we donated our profits to the Street Vendor Advocacy nonprofit. And we really just tried to see what was it like to create a kind of social venture. How do you create something that both makes delicious ice cream and also has an impact?
Yeah.
And we got to do a really fun summer, and I got 3 cavities. And at the end of the summer, Ethan moved to London to get his master's in international development. And then he moved from there to Kabul to be an aid worker in Afghanistan there. And from there, he started bringing spices back and lots of other ingredients that he loved while he was living there. He found phenomenal things and started bringing them back into the US and sharing them with his chef friends and all that. And they were getting really excited about it. And kind of my path on the other side is I went to San Francisco, where I currently am here. That's why there's still some daylight around us. And I wanted to keep doing the entrepreneurship thing. And I found an opportunity to start a mortgage company of all things, the classic from ice cream to mortgages path that most people take. And I got to do that and spent 4 years raising money, hiring employees, building this crazy venture-backed thing. And after 4 years, our financing fell through and this and that. We ended up getting 2 acquisition offers, sold the company, and got out of there. And so around that time, Ethan said, hey, check this out. And he flew to San Francisco. We met with one of the chefs here at the amazing Nopa restaurant. Yeah. And folks were getting so excited about the spices. And we kind of had 2 realizations. One is, if chefs who have access to all the best ingredients in the world are getting this excited about spices that Ethan brought back in his checked baggage, there's an opportunity here. Yeah. They must just not have access to these excellent spices. And 2 means that also home cooks are going to be delighted by when they get to really try and smell and taste these.
That is amazing. And I just love that you went from ice cream to mortgages to spices.
Yeah. Ethan and I always we did this business together back in 2010. And we're like, we got to figure out a reason to bring the dream team back together. So we just really wanted to find a way to kind of, we just were waiting to figure out the next thing. And it just, when he brought those spices out, we knew that was the next thing that we work on together.
So can you talk to us about the global spice industry and how it works? What is the current state? How do spices, so average Joe, me, if I look at the spices in my pantry, not Burlap and Barrel, where do they come from and how does the spice industry work?
Yeah, so anytime you're getting spices from a grocery store, it's really hard to answer the question, where did these come from? How long have they been here? Who grew them? How did they grow? What did they look like? There's just really, really short kind of this cinnamon is cinnamon is cinnamon. What does cinnamon look like? It's brown powder. And that's kind of as far as most people get to.
Right.
In the meantime, the rest of our pantries and the rest of our kitchens have undergone this change around traceability. We know where our produce and meat comes from. We know where our coffee and tea and chocolate comes from. We know where our wine comes from. And yet spices, those stories haven't happened yet. And so what happens is most spices come through this massive commodity market where basically they change hands 15 to 20 times. They take up to 10 years just to get into the country. Who knows? And normally it's many small farmers that are selling to intermediaries that are selling to intermediaries, and it just changes hands. And basically quality goes down, price goes up, and it gets so much harder to trace back to where it came from. And so we have a different model. We work directly with these smallholder farmers all around the world. They're these entrepreneurial, ambitious farmers that are growing exceptional spices. We set them up to be their own direct exporter, which never happens. And then we send trucks to their farms and fields and bring the spices all the way from there into the US. And so we are the direct importer. We pay them significantly more for their spices. We have full traceability on where they come from. And we're able to work with the farmers to bring this really, really high quality, really flavorful, unadulterated spice all the way straight to people's kitchens without it stopping along the way in very many places.
That's incredible. And is it, you know, because you talk about coffee and chocolate, and you're totally right. Like I'm so all about coffee. I think everyone is all about coffee. And I do always know where my coffee comes from. Why has this not happened in the spice industry yet? Like, it seems so incredible to me that there is this consolidation. I was listening to Ethan, your partner, on a podcast, and he was just like, there's just what you said, where these spices just are bought by people. They're just two or a couple of big exporters around the world that just, and he also said that different brands, you might go to the store and you might see different brands, but they're all coming from the same buyer.
Totally, totally. So the operating model of most spice companies is they just try to buy their spices from their favorite importer. But there's only a handful of these massive importers that are working with the spices to bring them into the US. So even the best folks, what they're doing is just trying to be really thoughtful about who is the importer, but normally they can only trace it back like one step to who brought it into the country, but not beyond that of, you know, where it came from and how it was grown and who grew it and all of that. I mean, you think about how quickly this has changed in coffee. Coffee just used to come in one flavor, black coffee, right? And now we're like, I want Guatemalan, shade grown, medium roast, you know, and all that. And it just hasn't happened in spices. And one of the main reasons is that it's a much more complicated supply chain to manage. With, you know, coffee comes from two types of beans, the Robusta or the Arabica bean. Chocolate comes from, you know, the cacao plant. Right. And so spices instead, like turmeric grows in one part of the country, ginger grows in another part, peppercorns are totally different and are a climbing vine with, you know, berries that grow in bunches like grapes. Cinnamon is tree bark. And so we're in some of these larger industries, you know, wine, we have grapes, and like, how do we figure out where the grapes come from and all that? Spices is so much of a broader problem to solve across so many more countries. And for us to be able to have a spice kind of store that we're able to kind of have enough spices to kind of fill your pantry, we need to work across more than 10 countries. We work with more than 200 farmers. You know, some of them are organized in cooperatives, some of them are individuals, but we had to kind of bring a much more complicated web together to find these farmers. And it's simpler from a transportation. We talk to the farmer, we send a truck to their field, we bring it in. But for us to have enough spices, for you to say, perfect, I want to switch over to well-sourced spices, we had to travel all around the world and talk to a bunch of different folks from all around to be able to bring it all together into the US. Canada.
Yeah, and now Canada. Can you talk a little bit about your process for finding the farmers and spices? So like I'll give you the ones we're starting with. We're starting with the cumin. We're starting with the black Urfa chili. We have the smoked pimenton, am I saying it right? Paprika.
Yeah, smoked pimenton paprika, perfect.
And we have the black lime. We have the royal cinnamon, which, I had never actually had real cinnamon until I had this. And then we have the Zanzibar black peppercorns, which actually I'm going to put in my bone broth right now.
Yeah, now we're talking. A live demonstration.
Right?
On the air.
Maybe you can tell us a little bit about the process of sourcing some of these in the farmers.
Yeah, so the way that it works is my co-founder, Ethan, he's the guy that's traveling the world and meeting with the farmers and all of that. And that's how we kind of split the world. I think I'm a little bit, we're both neurotic, but you know, he's out there, and with his background as an aid worker and having worked in Afghanistan and also in a few other countries, he has had some experience working with these folks. And so what we're really looking for is farmers. They're all kind of similar in that they're entrepreneurial, they're ambitious, they grow things in their own way, they really care about the quality of the spices. Oftentimes the way the commodity buyers come by to the farmers is they say, one price, we buy by weight, we don't care. Like, just give us what you got, take it or leave it. And these are the farmers that are saying, no, but I'm growing something in a beautiful way. I'm doing it organically, I'm doing it regeneratively. I'm letting it ripen on the vine for longer. And all these farmers are so thoughtful and so connected to the product, to the crop that they grow, that when we go to their farm, we know it immediately. The operation is clean, it's beautiful, you can smell it from a mile away. And so, for example, in Zanzibar, they grow peppercorns there. And peppercorns, the vines climb up trees, and in Zanzibar, often they're climbing up the cinnamon tree, which is just what grows natively there. There you have some, the Ceylon cinnamon originally came from Sri Lanka, but then was brought over to Zanzibar and took really beautifully there.
Amazing.
The peppercorns grow up the grow up the trees, and then give these berries that grow like in bunches like grapes. And in Zanzibar, the soil is a little too sandy. It's a little bit too windy. And what ends up happening is when these peppercorns are growing in their less than optimal condition. This is like grapes and wine. When we have too much rain in grapes, they don't produce as good wine. So these peppercorns are struggling a little bit, and they grow smaller, fiercely spicy, very citrusy peppercorns that are really, really beautiful. And this cooperative is 25 farmers. They're also organic, and they grow regeneratively, which just means that stuff comes out that's just beautiful. You don't grow, when you think of spice farms, it's not these like giant farms with rows of crops. It's more like, think about a jungle or a forest where you have the peppercorns growing on cinnamon trees next to bay leaf plants, next to all these things that are kind of all growing together. And it really is beautiful. And the farmers are really minding the land and making sure that the plants are in really good condition and happy and healthy. And then they produce these really gorgeous spices.
Oh my gosh, I just smelled all of those 5 things.
Yeah.
And so how do you, I mean, even in terms of language, I mean, how is it, you're communicating with farmers? Is it through, is it through WhatsApp? Is it through, we were talking about how amazing it is now that we have, I was going to pick up my phone, but I'm talking to my phone. But like how amazing it is now that we have phones, because even we couldn't have started Switch if we didn't have the phone, right? And so it's interesting that, I mean, how do you communicate, I guess, with the farmers?
Yeah, everybody, I'm in San Francisco, and everybody's saying,
Oh,
what kind of things are you using to kind of source your spice? Like, what kind of technology? Is it blockchain? Is it crypto? Is it algorithms? And we're like, no, our technology is WhatsApp and Google Translate.
Right.
I mean, in the past decade, what's really happened is that even in the most remote areas of the world, people have smartphones and people have fast enough internet to, you know, connect on Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp, send photos, send videos, and all that. And so there used to be all these intermediaries that you had to have. You were either like physically on the ground, they're talking to those farmers, or, you know, or you weren't able to talk to them. And now we're able to communicate in different ways. And so we have some partner farmers in Vietnam. We went to central Vietnam, where everybody told us that they don't grow the cinnamon there anymore that they used to. And the cinnamon there was known for being the highest quality, spiciest cinnamon that Vietnam produced. And everyone said they cut down the trees, the kids are no longer farming it, they went to get jobs in the cities. And what we found out is that we met with a guy that used to work at an NGO that we had been connected with, and he brought us out, and we met these farmers that were growing this beautiful heirloom variety of cinnamon from central Vietnam. And the crazy thing about cinnamon is that it's tree bark, right? And so these cinnamon trees, they're the best when they're allowed to grow for 20 plus years. And so what ends up happening is the parents will plant the trees, and then the children will harvest the trees. And they give the children a plot of land, and the longer they can wait to harvest the trees, the more value the bark has. And so it's literally a savings account. So the longer you can wait, the more. And then when you get married or want to buy a house or whatever, you take the trees down, you plant new trees the whole time for the next generation. But it really is not as simple as planting something one season and grabbing it the next season.
Yeah.
And so we found these group of farmers that were all growing it in this beautiful way. They were waiting 20 plus years to harvest these trees. And we went up to see them harvest it. You could smell it from a mile away. Just as we were getting anywhere near there, you could see they would grow the cinnamon on the top of these giant hills, and you could smell the cinnamon flavors all the way from parking the car and starting to approach it. And so what happens in the spice trade is all the cinnamon goes down to the city of Saigon. It gets shipped from Saigon to the US. And even though no cinnamon grows around Saigon, what do we call Vietnamese cinnamon? Saigon cinnamon. And so most of the cinnamon now grows in northern Vietnam. We gave it a name of royal cinnamon because this was part of the cinnamon that the royals would love, and the most highly valued cinnamon that would go just to the royal family. And so we brought the cinnamon. It's exceptionally sweet. It tastes like there was sugar added to it, but it was not. That's just how it grows, and it's also a little bit spicy. And so what we were able to do is find these. We were able to find these farmers. We met so many farmers on a trip to Vietnam. We spent 2.5 weeks. We ended up flying out there with a family friend of mine who also speaks Vietnamese. And she put up with me and Ethan for 2.5 weeks, you know, in little buses and trains and all that, going from the north to the south of Vietnam. And when we found these farmers, we knew we had found the right ones. And we sat down on these blue plastic chairs, drank a lemonade at 8 p.m. at night, and negotiated on our first purchase from these farmers. And by the time we left, we had purchased 1,000 kilograms of this royal cinnamon, and they had started preparing it for our first shipment. And that was just so exciting. It was such a revelation when we got to taste it, of what cinnamon could taste like.
Yeah. Amber and Marin are like, I'm so excited to try the cinnamon. Guys, like I wish, even the color I noticed of the cinnamon, it's just so, I'm trying to, but like that's just so bright and beautiful. Even the cinnamon in my pantry, the older cinnamon was brown. which I thought was really interesting. And this is just like bright orange, red, you know, which is amazing.
Yeah, I use it on everything. This is the Saigon cinnamon, the Vietnamese cinnamon, what we call royal cinnamon.
Yeah.
It's beautiful in sweets where you really want that cinnamon. It's a kind of a dominant flavor, you know?
Right.
So normally you'd use like something like a Ceylon cinnamon in savory dishes, and this one's perfect on yogurt, in cakes, and in brownies, and whatever you want, just on top of coffee. Just throw it into whatever you'd like.
I love it. If we can, do you think we could go kind of to each, because you started talking about it, if we can kind of go through each and you can give us some tips and tricks?
Yeah, happy to.
Is that okay? Like most of, as I was saying, most of our customer friends just, we call them our customer friends, but we crave flavor. So, and I think sometimes like just for me, I'm also not only am I a spice baby, these aren't spicy, but you know what I'm saying? Like just even on a hot point, but also I get intimidated really easily in the kitchen. So I was hoping that you could kind of take us through, I can hold them up and maybe you could give us some tips.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I'm also like, I'm like a casual cook, you know, like if you throw some stuff at me, I'm like, I don't know what you want me to do with this, but well, I'll try to give you guys some quick tips on how I've kind of integrated these into my cooking. Awesome. And I'll try to be as carb conscious as I can. So I apologize. Feel free to yell at me in the comments if I mention things that are off limits.
No, nothing's off limits. We all have fun sometimes with our food. Okay, let's start with the black Urfa chili because I want to say thank you. You're sending 200 samples for our Canadian customer friends, and I'm so excited. Like I can't wait for them to try it. Do you want to start with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you guys have heard of the Aleppo chili or the Marash pepper, that tends to be a kind of medium spicy pepper that's tomatoey and sweet. This is actually grown also in Turkey and is also like from the exact kind of same pepper. The only difference is that instead of drying it in the sun, they dry it under these plastic tarps where it kind of cooks in its own juices and almost like cures and ferments and gets this like malty, molassesy, tobacco-y raisiny flavor. This is a favorite among vegans just because it has a really beautiful savoriness to it and a medium heat. So it doesn't overtake. It's like really pure flavor. The farmers add a little bit of salt, less than 2% by volume. Okay. And then a little bit of sunflower oil to just kind of stop it from the curing and fermentation process to kind of stabilize it. And what you get is this like dark and malty chili. This is my favorite because it's one that you don't need to get fancy with. Throw it on fried eggs, throw it on mac and cheese and any pasta. It's actually really nice in brownies or on hot chocolate or on things like that. This is like, think about anywhere where you want just like a little bit of heat, wherever you'd use, let's call it sriracha or a red pepper flake or anything like that. The black Urfa chili is perfect there. And just try it out. It adds a beautiful amount of flavor on top of the heat. So that's where we like our chilies, to like not just purely like blast your head off, but this one is really nice, a really nice balance of flavor and heat.
How about the wild mountain cumin? So my mom, she, cause my background's Indian, and she said, I was like, Mom, I have some cumin. And then she smelled it and she said, Neha, this is the high quality cumin that she knew that actually goes in some of the Indian dishes, which are rice based or potato based. So like pulao and some specific curries. Cause she said this is like in India, this would be the more expensive cumin. That's the way she explained it to me, and like with a stronger flavor. Yeah.
So we're gonna add that quote to our homepage now from your mother.
Please do.
If she likes it, then we've made it.
Yeah.
So wild mountain cumin is really interesting. This is kind of the spice that started the company. This is where Ethan was working in northern Afghanistan. He found that they were cooking with a different type of cumin that he was used to. And what we saw is that this is actually a little bit different from the cumin that we're used to in America. It's called black cumin.
Yeah.
And so black cumin is known for being smaller, more fragrant, and really intense. It's beautiful because you don't really need to grind it. You don't really need to toast it. You can, but you can also just bite through it. And it's just so fragrant and intense that you don't really need to toast it too much to bring the flavors out. They're already really there. Right. And so the way that it's used is often throwing some of this in rice towards the end of the cooking. Yeah. Use it with lamb. To kind of marinate or crust it around the lamb in any, in any of those dishes that want that. We really like it in like, if you're tossing vegetables, cook with a little bit of olive oil, cumin, black pepper, throw in paprika, anything else, and just use that to kind of roast the veggies, which we think is really beautiful. If you're making hummus at home, Really beautiful. Throw it into the blender before you blend it all up.
Oh,
This is a really versatile spice that we really love, and it's so intense and fragrant that you know, it just a little bit goes a long way. And that's
okay.
another point about our spices. Very often, if you're gonna try to substitute one of our spices in your recipe, start with half, just in case.
Wow.
Like it can be a little bit overwhelming to some folks. They get mad at us because they say our spices are too flavorful. We're like, that is
Wow.
a feature, not a bug.
Yeah.
And so enjoy it. But that's to get started. Just kind of work your way up to make sure that you don't overspice something, and then that becomes all you can taste.
That's crazy. So you just said, hey, use less of my spice. Like, that's amazing. And that kind of shows you how potent it is. I am obsessed with the smell of the smoked paprika.
Yeah. So
Like,
smoked paprika is really special. So peppers in general are native to the kind of Western hemisphere, like the Americas. And so when Christopher Columbus came to the US, he brought back some of the peppers over back to Spain, and then they found their way to Extremadura in Western Spain, where they
right,
started smoking them to preserve them. And so these peppers are grown in Western Spain. It's a DOP, the same way that like champagne can only come from Champagne in France. Pimenton is the specific type of paprika that's only grown in this area of Western Spain. And so what they do that's really special about it is, one, they rotate their crops between this paprika and tobacco. So the whole area
wow.
smells a little bit like a smokehouse, you know, like
Yeah.
it's this crazy walking through the fields. But they take these peppers and they have these two-story kind of smokehouses. And in the bottom story, they have an oak wood fire that burns 24 hours a day. And it's almost like the size of a campfire. And on the upper level, they have about 1,000 kilograms of these peppers, of these fresh peppers. And they let them dry like that for 2 weeks. Every day, guys come with big shovels and flip the peppers over. And they know that they're ready by the sound of the crunch that they make. When they're fully dry, they make this like crackly sound. And so they take them and then they grind them down. And what you end up having is this like beautifully smoky flavor. And this one, like the Urfa pepper, is also a vegan favorite because the Urfa adds a savoriness and the paprika adds a smokiness. Beautiful in chilies, beautiful as a chicken rub. Beautiful on also, I love to toss my roast vegetable and spices. They're like my like blank canvas for just experimenting with spices.
Yeah.
And so use this anywhere where you want a little bit of flavor, and especially if you're trying to like mimic like a char grilled, like fresh off the barbecue flavor, this is really, really beautiful for that. Or even just enhancing it. Beautiful in sausages, you know, it's a great pairing for meat in general.
I love that. I think this one, it's going to be interesting. I'll send you the one so we're launching these on my birthday, which is February 11th next week.
Happy
But
birthday.
thank you. But I'm going to let you know which one. I have a feeling it's good. I can't pick. I can't predict. So we'll see.
We can put money on it.
Yeah. We have we've talked about the black Urfa, the wild mountain cumin, the paprika, we have the black lime, and we've talked about the cinnamon. We have the black lime and then the peppercorn. So if we can talk about the black lime.
Okay, the black lime is a super interesting story. So black limes are typical of Persian cuisine, where they'll take whole limes, they dry them in the sun, they oxidize and turn black, and then the whole thing is ground down. The peel, the pith, the seeds, everything is ground down into a powder. And so typically in Persian cuisine, they'll throw a whole lime or two into a pot of soup. And when they're dry, they almost have like the size and weight of like a ping pong ball. They kind of like are almost hollow, just everything dries out and they turn like jet black. And by the way, if you check us out on Burlap Barrel on Instagram, you can scroll through. We have a lot of photos of the spice sourcing process, where they grow, who the farmers are and all that. So if you're curious about finding out where your spices come from, we have a lot of stuff for you on there. But basically what we did is we did a little project with Sweet Green, the salad company, and they wanted these ground black limes. And so we just ground them down and we just had a little bit of extra. We put it on the site and it started moving. People really liked it. And so the idea with this is that these black limes come from Guatemala. We also source our cardamom from there, where we have like a vertically integrated farmer who's really a sweet guy and really ambitious. And when he was a kid, he started picking cardamom when he was 9. And then over time, bought some land, then bought a truck, then bought a drying facility, then bought a warehouse. And now he's this really awesome vertically integrated cardamom farmer. But a lot of the cardamom in the world, so Guatemala exports more cardamom than anywhere else in the world. India is number 1, but Guatemala exports more. So India is very careful on the export process. And so Guatemala jumped in and said, perfect. Some German coffee farmers in the early 1900s said, coffee grows really well here. I wonder how cardamom would do. And so in Alta Verapaz, the cloud forest is the area where it grows. And what they do is they were already sending a lot of cardamom to the Middle East because it's used often in Middle Eastern with coffee and all that.
Right.
And so they said, what else do those customers want? And they started growing the black limes also. Think of this as your perfect like lemon replacement. So anywhere we could use a squeeze of lemon or lime, the black lime is perfect. I love to use it often mostly as a finishing spice. So topping a hummus or baba ganoush, put on guacamole, rim a margarita glass with it. It's really nice also as like I also like it as a chicken rub. But really like the rule here is anywhere that could use a little squeeze of lemon, the black lime is going to be a perfect substitute. I think it's also really good in pastry. You know, because lemon, you can't always add liquid. There's some scenarios where you want that sourness and tartness, but you can't add the liquid, and the black lime is perfect for that.
I think it was someone either because Burlap Barrel also has a Facebook group, right?
Yeah.
And I think it was somewhere, either in the Facebook group or on Instagram, that I saw that someone said avocado toast will never be the same again.
Yeah. Full disclosure, that was me.
Okay, done.
I post whatever I cook in the Facebook group. We have a thing called the Burlap Barrel Spice Forum, where folks, if they're trying to think about what to cook and how to use the ingredients, or they just want to share what they're up to, everybody posts it there. And yeah, it's a beautiful topper on top of avocado. I
love that avocado. And you know, what is it called? I think everyone says avocado toast is for millennials, but I love avocado. I don't care. So yeah, that is totally. If that's something I steal from the millennials, so be it.
Yeah, if the millennials are the reason you have more avocado in your life, then that's okay.
Yeah. Amber said it would be good with the fish too. Oh yeah.
For sure. Yeah.
That'd be incredible. See, Amber, you have all the cool ideas. Okay, the Zanzibar, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, black peppercorns.
You're doing great.
Amazing. Okay.
So Zanzibar has been a beautiful, like the perfect climate for growing a pretty broad variety of spices. And these are this is a cooperative of 25 farmers that are organic and growing these regeneratively. And this is the story that I shared a little bit earlier about how they grow, and often on top of cinnamon branches that they're growing in these beautiful bunches. Peppercorns are really hard to pick. They ripen in different stages. Right. The outside of the peppercorn that we see, this like the black skin of it is like the raisin, right? That's the fruit of it. And on inside there's this like white core, and that's where the heat comes at from. Right. And so these peppercorns are a beautiful mix of being kind of like spicy, but also fruity. And they're just so delicious. We've had a few chefs use them for dishes like a cacio e pepe or other peppercorn centric, pastas and they win awards for them. And so it's been really awesome. People really don't think about peppercorns and where they come from and like why does it even matter? And these are beautifully sourced. They're really spicy. They're going to start becoming from like a background ingredient to a dominant ingredient in your cooking. Yeah. And we have them in a little grinder top that you can remove the top from, refill. People kept asking us for that. So we finally went ahead and did it. And so this has become one of my favorites just because I keep it on my counter and I use it. And just a note to everybody asks us, how do I store my spices? And there are two answers. Answer one is, if you want them to last forever, keep them away from heat, away from light, away from moisture, fine. We don't want your spices to last forever. We want you to use your spices. So keep them where you can see them. Keep them near the stove if you have to. But just keep within arm's reach, because what we find is if you can like see your spices and you're looking around saying, what does this dish need? If they're buried in the back of your cabinet, that's where they're going to stay. And so do whatever you can to just keep them front and center, keep looking at them, bring them out, and just keep them as part of your food, because what a cool way to add, flavor that doesn't involve salt, sugar, or fat. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Can you just change your website to that tagline? Because that was insane. I think we're going to do like a 1-minute clip of that and then send that to you guys. Okay, I'm in. So Tanya is saying we need smell-o-vision. I really wish, oh, sorry, I just dropped paprika, but don't worry, it was closed. I didn't lose all of it over our carpet. But I really wish I have never smelled spices like this, I would say. And I spent like the first 12 years of my life in India. So my spice, like at least the smell-o-meter is high, but like just the fragrance and how you guys, I didn't even know cardamom was not just from India, right? Like, right, totally. Cardamom is used almost every day in every dish, in all the teas, like by street vendors all over India. Like that's what they. Totally. So it's incredible. They know how to use spices, and it's amazing. I think like a good frame of reference, if you think about it, is we've all had that like apple at the grocery store, and then we've had that apple at the farmer's market, and then you're like, oh right, this is what the fruit is supposed to taste like. I think it's similar that just spices, what's come here just through like centuries of kind of the same process, it's just been this big commodity. And so what the difference is when you know sourcing and when they're fresher and closer to harvest, you get a product that just smells a lot more like what you think it should smell like. And now the further you come in, you're like, oh, this is beautiful. And so that's what we try to. It's hard to do it over the internet, but if you lean really close to your phone, no, I'm just kidding. But we're trying to find new ways. So if you guys come with creative ways to communicate how these smell and how these taste, send them our way. Well, we'll send you free spices for it.
I love that. What is your sort of, I always think like food, when I think about even for Switch, we're an online store and we source foods from really special people like yourself. And I always think about how I want our customer friends to feel when they, open a Switch box. What is your hope and your desire for home chefs? Like, I know obviously you guys sell to restaurants and restaurant chefs, 100% they're looking for quality and they probably have the smellometer, much higher than mine. But what is your kind of like hope and desire with your company for just your customers?
Yeah, I think that spices have always been kind of like an afterthought in a lot of the North American cooking, where you kind of are like, yeah, I sprinkle some salt and some pepper into things. Or what we also see is that people love blends. And there's nothing wrong with spice blends, but just be mindful of the salt content in them. Many blends, you look at the ingredient list, ingredient number 1 is salt. And that can be challenging for some folks that need to limit their salt intake. Mm-hmm. My hope is that people kind of feel good in the kitchen with kind of experimenting and playing around with these spices, that you try different combinations, that you kind of feel like through the spices, we have these like funny like tasting notes on the sides of them. So if you can see here, maybe it's a little bit blurry, but our royal cinnamon, brown butter, buckwheat honey, and orange peel, we try to have like nice descriptions of what to do with them and of the different flavor profiles. And then we're hoping that this isn't a thing that just is part of a recipe that you cook once every 6 months for your friends and family, but that you start integrating it and playing around with it and all of that. And that there's like a kind of like a safe, like kind of playfulness for this, so that you don't do anything that will make you like throw away your dinner, because that would be that's not what we're trying to do. Right. But next time you're cooking like lamb, sprinkle a little bit of cinnamon in there and see how it tastes. Next time you're making the guacamole, you top it with some black lime. You order in a pizza, throw some Urfa chili on there. Like, I don't know, I think it just, you start familiarizing yourself a little bit more with spices as a tool, because it gives you such a broad palette. It gives you such a broad sense of flavors and tools to kind of modify the flavor of your food and make it really, really delicious. Yeah. And that's, I think, what a lot of restaurant chefs also know how to do. You're like, why is my food at home less exciting than the restaurant?
Yes, tell me. Tell me
like,
why.
Well, one, they use mountains of salt. So like, right. that's part of it. Right. But and it can be delicious, and there's a time and place for that. But I mean, 2 is just using spices of flavor. Usually when we want to add flavor, we use fat, salt, or sugar. Like, those are the only tools in our belt to make something taste better. Right. But instead, let's talk about Urfa and cinnamon and paprika and cumin and cardamom and all these other spices that have such a broader range to kind of really make your food really unforgettable.
I love everything that you've said is driving so much with me, especially because I think what you're encouraging me to do is not be scared in the kitchen. Like, I don't have to follow that recipe down to the T and just be, because I'm such a recipe follower. When I make something, I could just take some ground beef and then throw in some cumin, some paprika, top it with, black lime. Who cares? Like,
yeah, you're making me hungry.
I can do kind of all of that stuff. Like, I almost I got chills when you were talking. So.
Oh, well, another really easy thing that I've started to do personally is I have a handful of recipes that are my like experimenting recipes. Okay. As in, like, I keep all these things the same, but the one thing that I change is the spice blend or whatever it may be. And so I do that all with fried eggs. Like, some days I'll top a fried egg with paprika. One day I'll top it with turmeric. One day like, if you want to kind of experiment in a kind of safe way, then just find one dish. And then every time you make it, let's call it once a week. Every time you make it, do a different spice blend. And by the end of a month, you'll learn so much about building flavor and the different blends and how the impacts are, and also like what you and your family love. And so it's a really easy and kind of safe way to not go overboard with it.
Okay, I love that tip for me, because we make fried eggs all the time. So That is amazing. And I know our customer friends make eggs 25 different ways. So that's perfect.
Eggs are beautiful. Eggs are always the best thing to test
Eggs are
on.
the best thing. I'm like that child that grew up on breakfast for dinner and I loved it.
Yeah.
Brian was saying one tip is in the Facebook group that when the bottle is empty, fill the bottle with olive oil and let it sit and have spice infused olive oil.
Totally.
And there was Urfa chili infused olive oil. And then, hey, Max DB, next time you're making literally anything, put some Urfa chili in there. Damn. Okay. Well, we will do that.
I like it.
I love
Yeah,
it.
I learned that trick from that's the trick that you do with an empty like Nutella jar. If you have like or peanut butter jar or whatever.
Yeah.
What do? You throw some yogurt in there and then you just kind of work
100%.
your way through it. If you have an empty spice jar, throw some olive oil in there, let it infuse, and you're going to have some of the best olive oil that you've ever tasted.
Oh, 100%. Now you're making me hungry. So I did have a question in terms of single origin, but single origin, I could explain it, it's coming from one place, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so for us, single origin can sometimes be single estate, as in there's this one farmer that is growing this and we're purchasing from them their lot and all that. It could be that it's a cooperative of farmers. Very often farmers will kind of form groups together so that they can share the cost of a drying machine or a grinding machine or even a nursery, right? For the little like seedlings for their plants. But the main point is that it has to come from one central like designated area. It can't come from like also from Afghanistan and also from Tanzania and all, like it can't be simultaneously from multiple places. And the main goal is that different areas have different terroir, different farmers have different growing techniques. And so by kind of focusing down on one area and one group of farmer or one even single farmer, you get a very beautiful expression of that spice. So, from the Urfa chili and how those guys are drying it to the royal cinnamon that's all coming from these farmers that are growing it in the same way, in the same area, you get these really, really expressive flavors. And that's really what we're looking for. We want you to open that jar of spices and smell and be like, oh my God, yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
And so that's really what we're working on. The single origin really helps narrow that down. There's so many certifications. There's so many tags. Do you know how many spices, have like a non-GMO logo on there? There are no known GMOs for spices. And yet, so like all these people are trying to find different ways of saying, here's what quality is, here's what to say. Many of our farmers grow organically, but organic certification is really expensive and oftentimes prohibitive for some farmers, depending on how they grow and where they're located and what their volume is and all that. And so really what we're trying to do is the two things is find these farmers that are growing exceptionally good spices and bring them into these single origin locations and then have a really, really short path from the farm all the way to our customers, cabinets and kitchens and all of that, so that you're able to get something that's really exceptional and then it still maintains all of its exceptional qualities by the time it's come to your home versus being lost to a series of warehouses and back rooms and whatever, on its way over to you.
I feel like I picture like this chart of this is how spices usually travel and how long it takes, and then cross that out and then burlap and barrel. Like that's
totally. And that's exactly the idea. And we're hoping that more companies, there are more single origin spice companies coming up and well-sourced spice companies, and we love it because the more that people do that, the more we support farmers, the more there's awareness for what spices should taste like.
Yeah.
And we just, I don't know, we love it. So we're really excited that folks are paying attention to this and we're not just out in the corner waving a flag, but that people are kind of coming and listening and sharing their stories. And we're just so flattered and honored that that's happening.
Well, I was going to ask you how burlap and barrel spices are different, but I don't think I need to ask that anymore because we literally, that is everything we talked about. About the farmers, I did see on your website and we talked about it over email that you guys pay farmers, fair wages and all of that. Can you talk a little bit about not the specifics, but just compensation for the farmers?
Yeah, absolutely. And we're actually working on it. We're a public benefit corporation. And what that means is that we reincorporated about 2 years ago. And we have just two things. We have to operate as a company, as any other like company in the US and does, but also we have the second and equally important public benefit, which is connecting smallholder farmers to high value markets. So it's part of our mission is to find a way that as we grow, we can do a better job supporting the farmers. And every time we purchase more spices from them, it translates into supporting their livelihoods in a different way than what the commodity market is currently doing. And so what we do is we go to the farm, we travel there. Ethan and I were in Vietnam last February. We're actually heading to India on February 29th for a 3-week sourcing trip. And so we go, we travel, we sit with the farmers, we chat with them. We try to understand what they're growing. And some farmers grow a broad range of qualities of stuff. And we say, we only want the top 10%, 5%, whatever. Tell us what the best of the best is of what you're growing.
Right.
And some farmers are only growing small quantities of exceptionally high quality spices. Yeah. And we sit there and we talk through them. We understand what their costs are. We understand what they need to get paid. We ask them to do more value added things. Like, so oftentimes farmers will sell their spices to somebody who then grinds the spices, and the person grinding the spices will double the price, right? And so we say, wait, why can't the farmers grind the spices themselves? What if they did more sorting and more cleaning and all? Like, how else can we justify paying them more and more so that it benefits us because the spices take one fewer stop along the supply chain, and also benefits the farmers because they get to internalize, they get to get a lot more of, like, they not only did they grow the spice, because they also sorted them and dried them and ground them and all that, we're able to pay them significantly more for that. So we're constantly trying to find ways to better support farmers. We're also looking for byproducts of the spice growing process. Okay. And so somebody in the chat I saw mention the cinnamon tree leaves. We brought back in Zanzibar, where we bring in one type of cinnamon from, the Ceylon cinnamon. The cinnamon trees also grow leaves, and the leaves are these beautiful bay leaf alternatives. And up until now, they've been kind of using them as compost and calling it a day. Yeah. Actually, in fact, ask your mom about this, because my understanding is that anytime that you go to an Indian grocery store and buy bay leaves, they're actually cinnamon tree leaves, not from the Laurel Bay tree. And so I would love to know if that's true or not, but I've heard it now a couple of times, and I need an OG source, and it sounds like your mother is one of those. So we bought that from them. We said, hey, can you guys dry these and pack them for us? And so now we have those. We're now working with them also on a nutmeg fruit. So nutmeg is a stone fruit. The nutmeg is in the middle. On the outside, mace grows, and on the outside of that is this like yellow fruit that is almost like, tastes like an unripe peach. But in the same way that you wouldn't eat ginger straight up, you know, this one is you can make jams out of it, you can pickle it, you can candy it, and you can even make, you know, liquors out of it. And so we're working with them on seeing what we can do to get the first shipment of nutmeg fruit. So we're constantly trying to find different ways of supporting farmers. One is for paying them more just for the exceptional spices. Yeah. 2 is by trying to find value-added services that they can do in ways that we can pay them more for that. And then 3 is by finding like byproducts of the whole spice process. They can say, hey, you were throwing this away, now we're buying it from you. And they just find different ways to kind of bring that in and just kind of help make sure they're making the absolute most amount of money they can make, you know, for the work that they do.
I'm in love. I now want to try the yellow fruit outside the nutmeg. Like,
we'll send you some. I think Ethan has like a secret spice storage, and so we can send you a little shipment and you can try it out.
We'll see what we can do. Okay, so my next question was the public benefit corp, because that's not something in Canada, but I'm really glad that you clarified that. Did you want to let us know kind of where people can find you, where people can find Burlap and Barrel? Like if when people start placing orders from us, where's kind of a good place to go start? Is it the Facebook group? Is it Instagram? Is it kind of the website recipes?
Yeah, we're happy to have you in any way, but the Instagram, since you guys are on Instagram, check out our Instagram account. Okay. We try to be pretty good about posting photos of the spices and where they come from and who's growing them and how they're being used. And if you want to see something or have a question of saying, hey, I wonder what, you know, star anise looks like just send us, we'll send you that way. Amazing. The Facebook group is a fun group for home cooks. I'm probably posting a little bit too much in there, but you know, like if you have a question on how to use a spice, if you have a recipe to share, if you have some ideas and suggestions or anything like that, that's the place for a really good conversation. And there's almost 1,000 other exceptional home cooks that are in there and just waiting to have that conversation. And so jump on in there, let us know and talk to us. And then just so you know, like, it's just me and Ethan, we're a 2-person company. And so reach out to us on our chat on our site, send us a message, ask the folks over at the Switch Grocery, you know, like whatever you want, you'll find we're a really short ways away. And we're just constantly, what we do is what our customers ask us to do. You know, that's like the best indicator that it's a business decision. That's probably a good one is if we're getting a handful of customers asking us to do it, then that's how we got to grinders. That's how we got to a lot of the spices that we now source, is folks just ask us for it. Yeah. And we eventually figured out how to do it.
Yeah, amazing. I think there are a few questions. Someone lost sound, and I'm hoping that everybody else didn't. And Megan, maybe if you want to close and join back. And if everyone can confirm that you still have sound, that would be amazing. Is the leaf around nutmeg mace? I don't know what that.
So basically the way that nutmeg, if you go to burlapandbarrel.com on the
Yeah.
homepage, that's a photo of the nutmeg fruit. And so first there's a nutmeg. On the outside there's a hard shell, and then on the outside of that is mace, which are these like red vines,
Right.
and it looks like a dragon's egg. And then on the outside there's this yellow fruit. That's what the nutmeg that's the nutmeg fruit. So it's a really crazy spice that has 3 different things going on simultaneously.
I think you also have a question about if there's any chance you'll carry cascara or cocoa husk for tea.
I'm happy to. We don't have a source for that right now,
Okay.
but good question. Keep asking us for stuff to carry, and basically, like, we've been getting a ton of questions about blue fenugreek, and like,
Okay,
you know,
amazing.
we've been getting a ton of questions for, you know, people ask us for, you know, a bunch of different spices. So we're working on a bunch of things. Keep sending us, keep sending us
Amazing.
stuff, and we'll do our best to get to source it as quickly as we can.
We'll keep sending you to different parts of the world.
Yeah, if we have to, you know, like, we'll do it.
So I think Instagram cuts us off after an hour, and I was very naive when I thought this chat would be half an hour, and it's like they can't thank you enough. Like, this has been such a wealth of knowledge for me, and Paula, everybody's saying that they can hear, so Maren's saying they can hear, so good. But I just want to say thank you. And one of the things that we always end with is we always kind of say that it's more than about just food. And so if you can you're a very busy person. If you can kind of tell us 2 things. One, something that helps you kind of better manage your time, like make sure that you're seeing your friends and running your business and making a living and all of that. If you can talk about that. And my second question is just around mental health. So what do you do sort of to prioritize your mental health and your well-being? Because sometimes I think that takes a back seat, especially with small business owners, with small business owners with a new baby, me. So like,
oh my God,
I need all of your tips. So time management and then a little bit of what you do for yourself.
So I think that we think a lot about when we are growing our business, we try to think about what is the least expensive way that we can get something done. And very often hiring somebody can be the most expensive way.
Yeah.
And then the less expensive way is to hire maybe like a remote person that can maybe support you on a few hours, or is a subject matter expert. So it will take you 5 hours to get done. We'll get done in 1 hour. Right. Or very often we have there's a bunch of tools from like Zapier to even like MailChimp, to all those that really have pretty good automation things. So like, I don't need to email every customer to remind them to reorder our spices. And so we've really, really worked hard to automate as much as we can. When we can't automate it, we see if we can find somebody who's an expert at that and can do it really quickly and really efficiently and be way better than myself or Ethan would be. and then if we can't, then we say, okay, let's bring on somebody to actually work with us in some meaningful way, in some meaningful capacity. And so we've been able to kind of create like kind of work-life balance by just making things be as automatic as possible. And there's so many things that are really wonderful about that. From we send out surveys automatically, we send out reorder reminders, and then we work on our newsletters and have that go out. And so we even made a little chat feature that goes to my cell phone and Ethan's cell phone. Yeah. And the main reason is just that because we want to know if customers have questions, we'd rather you ask us. But then we also made a little like chat bot that if you want to know where we ship, it'll answer. If you want to know about recipes, it'll answer. And so there's all these things that can kind of do that. So I've been really surprised. And a lot of people say, well, I'm not a technical person. So many of these solutions don't require technical expertise. You don't need to code anything. Like the chatbot is literally just like making a little map of like, like connecting lines to like questions and responses. Yeah. And it's really, really simple. And so I say, get in there and see. We're not doing this like 4-hour work week where we like just kick back and relax on the beach all day. But the automations have been really awesome ways to be able to get support and create some work-life balance in ways that I don't think would have been possible like 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And I think mental health is super important. Being a founder is super lonely and it's super stressful. And there's so much failure that happens along the way, right? That you're just constantly like hitting dead ends, but hopefully you're able to kind of jump over the hurdle and just kind of keep going. It's been really hard, but a lesson is to kind of create boundaries, right? So like, when am I no longer looking at my phone? Could I do emails until 10 p.m. every night? Absolutely. can I constantly be accessible? And so kind of creating no phone times has been really, really helpful. For me, I have some like mental health activities, which are going on runs and cooking are two things that are kind of like, let me to like release and regenerate and kind of find my center again. That makes me really happy.
Yeah.
And the last thing that I'll say is I also now work with either a peer group of other co-founders or sometimes just like a career coach, and finding somebody whose job is to spend an hour talking through my things where I'm hung up. Like I think we give so little time for self-care. And this is kind of a form of like, as entrepreneur, I don't have a boss. I don't have somebody that's managing me. I don't have somebody that's creating a career trajectory for me. I don't have somebody that's evaluating my performance. You know, obviously my co-founder and I, we support each other in that way, and I'm so grateful for that. But having kind of an external group or party of similar people that are all working through similar things has been really, really freeing. And, you know, it's so easy to think that all of your problems are unique to you, but there's so many people that are going through similar things. And it's so awesome to like have a kind of support group through that. So seeking that out, even at 1 hour every 2 weeks, is like transformative. I'm so grateful that I've been able to find this group. And if you're looking for recommendations, anybody listening or watching, feel free to reach out to me. I'm Ori at burlapandbarrel.com, or go to our site and type into the chat bot. I'll answer it eventually.
But you'll only answer it before 10 p.m.
Yeah, that's right.
Pacific.
That's right.
So that's 1 a.m. Eastern for us. Well,
that's right.
That is so wonderful. When you were talking, I was almost a little bit in tears because, you know, it's like I faced all of those things and I still face them, and now I have a baby. So I'm just like, where does my attention go, you know? But I think like even this Friday, so for my birthday next week, I actually made a plan and I said, I want to, instead of waiting for someone to treat me special or whatever, I need to treat myself special. And I actually made like a little small list of things that I want to do. And one of them, don't laugh, I'm going to the mall. Like
amazing. I love the mall.
I want to go to the mall.
Yeah. Go on a shopping spree.
That's what I want to, that's what I want to do. Or I want just like a couple of nights without my phone. And then another thing was I'm just going out to have dinner with a few friends. I hacked diabetes. He's actually in this chat right now, I think. So, amazing. You know, it's going to be, so I made this list and I think it took some time, and then it took some time to message my friends and be like, hey guys, you want to go out with me for dinner for my birthday and buy me a glass of wine? Like, you know, and then they're like,
I like
they're like, thought you'd never ask. And I'm like, perfect, done. So anyway, I just really, all of that really resonated with me. I think you guys are so wonderful. And Ori, I'm just like so excited to launch all of yours and Ethan Spices. Like this is.
Well, I'm so excited that folks in Canada now have a really easy way to get the spices. We're based in the US, so it's been harder to get things into Canada. I'm so excited you guys found us and decided to jump in on it. We're really grateful for that.
Yes, well, I will let you know kind of what moves first, but I have a feeling all of these are basically from all of your descriptions, like all of these are going to move. Like,
oh, I'm so excited to see, and I can't wait to grow with you guys and to do more and to get some spicy people here.
It's going to get some spicy people. It's going to be really fun. And I also want to say thank you to everyone for joining. Guys, I hope you thought this was wonderful. I'm going to summarize all of this in a blog post because I think this is wonderful. Committing to you that I'm going to do it before my birthday and before the launch, because especially all of Ori's tips on how to use each one, we can put that in our product description. So that way when you go on Tuesday, I think it is, to go pick which one, we can all actually have these tips in there. So I'll make sure to do that. Ori, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And take care. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Bye, everyone. Thank you for listening.